It's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Lane Theriault. He's the founder and CEO of Independence Dental, a highly unconventional DSO that is looking to partner with dentists across the United States. He founded Independence Dental in 2020 in partnership with the Firmament Group, a private equity firm based in New York. Prior to launching Independence, Lane was the founder and director of a Canadian dental platform, 123 Dentists, which started with only 13 clinics in 2017 and has since grown into the second largest DSO in Canada. Before he began working in the dental space, he was an investment banker with Citigroup, where he first became exposed to the concept of DSO. Independence is a different kind of dental service organization. They partner with successful dental practitioners across the country, providing them liquidity and back office support while allowing them to run their practice the way they see fit. That's strengthen their network with like-minded, growth-oriented entrepreneurs who have a thirst for sharing and learning new best practices. They provide support with industry expertise, trusted third parties without the burden of monthly management fees, and it's a new deal. And I'm so honored to have you on the show because, I mean, in dentists, we learn calculus, trig, geometry, and biology, and they don't really cover investment banking and private equity in dental school. And you're obviously have been a legend of this space for a long time. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Howard.
So, I think when Rick Workman of Heartland came on this show, we called the show "Dogs Bark at Things They Don't Understand," and I just thought it was so funny because I graduated in '87. There's always been a bad guy, and the bad guy is always anything new. First, it was a new dental insurance on concept called dental capitation. It's always something, and when you show up and they don't recognize your face, they run and hide. But now. It's been out a while. I have a very different view of DSOs because I'm here at ground zero in Arizona, where our governor could not believe that the hospitals, it was easier for them to hire nurses out of Ireland than to get them to come over from California and get their license. And he said, this is just government at its worst. And I agreed. So he passed a law that said, if you're licensed to do anything, nursing, accounting, whatever, in another state, you can do it in Arizona. So because of that, we have the highest DSO penetration of 18 out of 100 dentists in Arizona work for DSO. And if you look out at the long tail, the 5 last states aren't even at 1%. And, there's many ways to look at anything. And when you're as old as me, my 4 boys are now all independent, and they've made 6 grandchildren that are dependent on them. And I worry about dentistry, what dentistry is going to look like when I'm gone and my grandchildren go to the dentist. And if it wasn't for a DSO, I mean, before DSOs, if one of my grandchildren knocked out her front tooth on a Sunday, she'd find 3 mermaids on a unicorn before you found a dentist open. Sure enough, the DSOs, they already got one 7 to 7, 7 days a week. So all this competition is good for the patient. And I wanted to bring you on the show, and you've been a student of this for a long time. What do you think of the DSO movement from when you first discovered it, working at a bank, until now? How has it evolved in your career?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of come from like the fringes to, what is a DSO to, being very much in the mainstream and people being very aware of what they are, right? Like you can't avoid it anywhere you go in the world of dentistry. I think everyone and their uncle knows what a DSO is now. And I think that's the big sort of change that I've seen. It's just simple awareness. I think your remarks around, how people now see, sort of benefit in DSO is very encouraging, because I think there's still a lot of hesitation around working with DSOs. And I think that's kind of part of our sort of core mission is to, be kind of the nice guy DSO and try and be, change that image that maybe is not so positive that others may have of DSOs.
By the way, I love your accent. Were you born in Toronto?
I was actually born in Calgary out west, and moved here, about 10 years ago. So pretty permanent now.
Well, just so you're in Toronto, and right, that's where you're at right now.
That's right. Yeah.
And Toronto, it's basically. I mean, I know you know where it is if you're from around here, but we got listeners in all the countries. But it's right north of the United States, above Lake Erie, and what's that other big lake? Lake Ontario.
That's right.
Above New York, and it's actually. I've lectured in 50 countries. It's Canada is really different because Montreal is more like Paris. Toronto is very unique, and then you get out west. My gosh, British Columbia is actually my favorite. Vancouver, British Columbia is amazing, but I will have to say this about all Canadians: they're very conservative. So I knew when DSOs. I mean, they're just really conservative. I don't know if you know that or if you've been around other parts of the United States, but it's a very conservative crowd up there. So I imagine when DSOs came out, they weren't those conservative Canadian dentists were not too thrilled about this new idea.
Sure, I'd say that's a fair statement. And, the joke kind of in Canada is that we're always sort of 10 years behind the US. So if you want to see what Canada is going to look like 10 years from now, just look at what's happening in the US, right? And so that was certainly my experience. We were all sort of, peering over the border, seeing what was happening. And that actually was, part of what motivated me to get into the space, because just saw the acceptance that was starting to happen in the US. And this would have been, 2016, 2017-ish. And thinking to myself, geez, there's only sort of one major player here. At the time, there was just one company called Dental Corp, which is sort of a big behemoth. And then just a lot of sort of, independent, what we'd call maybe investor dentists who had, 10 or 15 clinics, but no one else really doing it. And so I think that was, sort of what motivated me to get into it. But yeah, I mean, at first, even the incumbents here, I think Dental Corp took a lot of heat coming into the market. And, they're the first folks to come into the space here in Canada. And I think that was, to my benefit, they sort of shielded us from a lot of the, they were able to make kind of the first mistakes, and we were able to sort of pick up and tweak along the way, where they had fallen down. So I appreciate their existence for that.
And so you're talking about is that Guy Amini?
Yeah, so Guy Amini was originally their general counsel. It was Graham Rosenberg who was the founder. So he was sort of the one that I was always viewed as my kind of chief competitor in Canada, my arch nemesis, if you will.
Guy was the
now.
president. So is Guy running it now?
Hmm.
And that's Dental Corp.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, congratulations that you came on the show, because he sure as hell didn't. And
his mistake, if you ask me.
No, they're just, I totally get it. I mean, I've lectured in Canada 100 times since 1990, and it's a conservative crowd. And now and then, so you got that. That's Dental Corp, and Hellodent, right? Dental Corp and Hellodent. That's what they.
Yeah, well,
that's the brands.
Well, 123 Dentist was the one that I was a part of in Canada, and then there's some other sort of more regional players. Canadian Dental Services. There's one called Ultima, another one called MCA, and those would kind of be the the ones that I would frequently run into as we were out looking for partners and competing against them for partnerships.
Yeah. So where do you think it's at now? I mean, where do you think I mean, DSOs have been out a long time. I mean, a long time. I mean, think about it. I graduated in 1987. That's when Orthodontic Centers of America, Gasper Lazarus, had rolled up the first one for the IPO. And so, I mean, that was 30 years ago. Then they all kind of everything on NASDAQ is no longer there. They all imploded, whatever. And then there was a reshuffling of the deck, and now they're back. I've noticed none of them have made it to Wall Street, though. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, a great question, actually, something that I would love to talk about. So this is really a matter of opinion here. So I totally just give my opinion. I don't know if there's a right answer. But I sort of view, public market securities, that's a stock that you can go and buy on a stock exchange, from your broker. Those tend to do really well, either when you have like no earnings and you're growing really quickly, or if you're sort of a tried and true industry that pays like a regular dividend, a regular distribution, that's a little bit more like a bond, right? Very consistent. And so dentistry doesn't really fit in that box, right? Because we have good cash flow, right? It produces a lot of cash flow, but because the industry remains so fragmented, you're better off as a manager to go and redeploy that capital in further partnerships, right? Keep growing through acquisitions, or keep growing, by building de novo, sort of same threads, or similar threads of the same vein. And so I think a DSO would not necessarily do well in public markets these days, but I think that will change. And I actually, it's funny you mentioned this because I've heard a rumor just recently that Heartland's eventual plans, they got bought by KKR not too long ago, and that's their sort of thought process for exiting, is that they're going to eventually do an IPO. So I would say that makes a lot of sense to me. I think larger DSOs fit better into a public market structure. But I think for smaller folks and pretty much the vast majority of the DSO market, I think that it doesn't necessarily make sense in that private equity markets, or what we call financial sponsors, are a better, more efficient place to get capital and ultimately provide more stability for DSOs generally. So I think it's a better fit now. But as the industry matures and we see folks get a little more consolidated, I think that will change. I think you'll see a lot more public market DSOs.
You learned about this concept as an investment banker in Citigroup, and so this isn't your first rodeo. I mean, I graduated from high school in '80. That was when they put Paul Volcker in charge of the New York Fed, raised interest rate. I mean, gosh, interest rates was 20.5%, double-digit unemployment, inflation. And then I graduated in '87, just 3 months before Black Monday. That was nice. And then the Y2K, then Lehman's Day. So I've seen this movie 4 times, and I know how it ends. To me, I'm a dentist. I'm not like you. I'm not an investment banker and all that stuff. But it seems like I'm in the middle of that same movie I've already seen 4 times. And I know how it's going to end, but I don't want to say anything because then people think you're a palm reader and predicting the future. But do these markets seem to you like something you've seen before with a bad ending?
Yeah, I also I was a little bit of a late bloomer myself. I only finished my undergrad in 2008. Great timing for me too, right? So it was a hard slog finding a job back then. So I feel your pain there, my friend. But certainly you got to expect that there's going to be some cyclicality to it. I think what's been exceptional about the last sort of decade and a bit since the financial crisis has just been, all my life, basically, people are saying, oh, interest rates are so low, they can't possibly get lower. They can't possibly get lower. And yet they do, right? And so, now here we've kind of come to the inflection point, it seems, where, interest rates really actually can't get much lower. I think the government in the United States, or the Federal Reserve, isn't going to allow negative interest rates. I think they're very clear about that. And now people are talking about inflation, right? And so I sort of starting to see the top rolling over, which of course is a little scary and not something that folks have felt for a long time. But I think in the end it will ultimately be a good thing. I think a little bit of volatility in those instances can help shake out the good from the bad, and the good ones will survive, and the ones who aren't so good, probably won't. And I think that's a healthy aspect of markets.
Yeah, and some of the stuff, like when you get old enough, number one, I've never trusted the government. I think I think every movie has a hero and a villain. And if you look at every story that's ever written in the last 5,000 years, the government was always the villain. And when they say, we haven't had inflation since 1980, well, I know in 1980 that you could, in high school, you could buy the hottest new Camaro with Krager wheels or Trans Am for $10,000, and now all those cars are $30,000. And when I dig into those deals, I think they cook the books on the no inflation. Like, I've seen things like, oh, well, that car didn't have an airbag, so we have to have an airbag allowance for the inflation and adjust the price. And, oh, those apartments are the same price because they only had 8-foot ceilings, but now they're like 15-foot ceilings. So we're not going to do square footage on the ground. We're going to do vault. It seems like they've done every financial accounting bullshit trick to tell us that we haven't had inflation since 1980. But the same thing. Now, granted, I'm old school. I'm from Kansas. When you said that, when you grew up in Canada, you just look down the United States, they were 10 years ahead. Well, I grew up in the middle of America in Kansas, and that's what we always said too, that it'll happen in California and Hollywood, and it'll take 10 years to get to Kansas. But like EBITDA, just anybody who even says the word EBITDA, you already know here's a group of people that are lying, sleazy snakes, and here's a group of people that are not. Well, if you say EBITDA, it's about a 98% chance you're in the lying, sleazy snake group. Because I mean, think about it. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Oh, like, well, why don't you just say, well, Howard, what's your overhead? Well, my profit minus labor, lab, supply, rent, mortgage, equipment, bill out, computer, insurance, malpractice. I mean, geez, Merry Christmas. How every business has earnings as a cost of business, interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. I mean, where is this business located? On the planet Uranus? I mean, it seems like they're always trying to cook the books, and I assume that's why I've always assumed whenever I meet someone, if they're wearing a tie, I assume the tie is to keep the foreskin from going up over their forehead before they lie to me. But what's funny about it the most is this pandemic actually was the best thing that ever happened for a DSO because all animals are, I mean, we're a herd animal and there's safety in numbers. And Dentaltown, I've had that website since 1999, and one of the most robust parts of it is the free classified ads. And we've always had about 1,000 dental offices for sale and about 4,000 jobs for the new graduates. We're sitting there at the end of April, and next month 6,000 new graduates will come out. And Dentaltown always had about 4,000 ads for job, and then the pandemic hit, and we immediately went from 1,000 practices to sell to 2,000, and the
Wow.
5,000 jobs went to 1,000 only at DSOs. And I saw all my tough redneck cowboy independent dentists say, you know, this is just too big for one cowboy. I'd rather be part of a herd. I'd rather be part of a group. I ain't got the energy for this. And I swear it took a pandemic for dentists to say, wow, this is great. I can get liquidity out of my practice. I don't have to be the only one wearing every hat in marketing and accounting and finding PPE supplies. And I mean, so I think this was a godsend to the DSO industry. Is that the way you see it?
I selfishly, I would have to agree. I think it has been hugely beneficial to us, especially, launching independence. We were basically ready to go at the beginning of 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and our financing was pulled. We have to have some difficult conversations with our doctors. Obviously, they were understanding of the circumstances. But I don't know that we would have been able to sort of put together our formative group of doctor partners had we not had experienced COVID, because it basically gave us extra time to kind of get to know folks, gave us a little extra time to get prepared. I think the hardest part about it for us was on the other side is the financing, right? When things are good, money's everywhere, and it's tough to find partners. And when things are bad, everybody wants to partner, but there's no money, right? And so that was really more of the challenge. I think we got a great result out of that. I actually find now that the market is quite hot, and you're seeing people are kind of coming back in spades because they realize, the sky is not falling down. But we were able to certainly capture some of the the benefit of the pandemic and people wanting to partner before sort of things heated up again. So yeah, I think we were a direct benefactor of that. But I would say the gold rush is back on. Everybody is sort of back into looking for dental clinics to partner with again.
So do you so you agree that it's on fire right now, and it's going to be a big help to your, kind of like a big headwind, right?
Yeah. So I guess there are more people interested in selling to DSOs, but I would say there is still just not enough sort of supply to satisfy folks like myself and others who are eager to get into the space. And so I think if you're a DSO, that means you've really got to be differentiated. You've got to have something to offer, and don't try and expect to be able to copy your neighbor and do what they have done, maybe for longer than you, better than you. You've really got to focus on carving out a niche for yourself and doing something different. And I think what we're trying to do at Independence is kind of take that to the extreme and be the anti DSO. And I think the ultimate test of that is, will someone sell to you for a price that's lower than what someone else offers, because they like your culture, they like the way you do business better. And we've seen folks do just exactly that, coming onto our platform. So it's encouraging for us.
So So basically, a bubble is, like you just said earlier, when times are going good, the banks just throw money at you, and then when times start contracting, there's a deleveraging. They say, "Oh, if you want to borrow $10,000, you have to have a $10,000 CD in our bank and a $10,000 balance in your savings account." And you're like, "Okay, then why the hell would I need to borrow $10,000?" So in a contraction, leverage up, and then it crashed so fast because it leveraged down. Do you think if there was a just a routine contraction? I mean, Schumter got a Nobel Prize in economics for business cycles, the Austrian economist. If there was another contraction cycle, do you think there's a lot of DSOs that are so highly leveraged they would not survive the contraction, thus allowing companies like use? I mean, what I love about the contractions is cash is king, and then that thing you wanted to buy for $1 is now half off, and
Yeah.
you're supposed to buy low and sell high. Do you think there's a if in a good contraction that we've seen the size of Lehman's Day or Y2K or before the four I've lived through? Do you think some DSOs won't make it, and there'll be a lot of dental practices for sale that are half off?
I actually think that COVID was a very unique sort of recession in the sense that right dental clinics were forced to close their doors, right, and so the highly levered guys really got impacted hard here, right. Whereas I think in a more sort of generic, economic downturn, you may have fewer patients coming through the doors, but they don't stop, right. And so I think in those cases you're going to see, there certainly may be some folks who are overextended and get into trouble. But I would say, those folks are swimming without swim trunks anyway. And if a little economic malaise puts you into a poor position, you probably had something fundamentally wrong with your business to start with. And I think, one of the things that, we should all be grateful for being a part of this industry is that it is so recession resistant. And so I think even, a little bit of a downturn might have an impact on prices. I think interest rates probably being the biggest one. If we see interest rates rise, that'll probably have the biggest impact on dental clinic valuations. But I don't know if I would say that you're going to see DSOs going bankrupt left, right, and center, especially coming out of COVID. Leverage levels have come down, and I think folks have much stronger balance sheets now going forward. So, but yeah, will there be some deals? Probably, but I don't think we're going to see bankruptcies nearly to the scale.
Well, that
Um,
was a genius
yeah,
answer. That basically this pandemic, before the contraction, has done a lot of the cleanup. A lot of brush that was going to catch fire has already been burned off and cleaned off and all that kind of stuff. So, what do you? So again, the pandemic. I mean, it was really good for me in Dental Town. I mean, my God, Dental Town doubled in size because all these dentists are realizing, well, what the hell am I going to do now? And so the Dental Town went huge. DSOs went huge. So when you started to instead of doing a Me Too product, you cut your teeth on Dentist 123 and other ones, Dental Corp, whatever. When you're looking for your new model, Independence Dental Services, what what were your innovations? What problems were they solving from what you've seen before?
yeah, sure. So, geez, yeah, I might be a little long winded here, so forgive me. But
Take
I
your
think
time.
I think when we when I sort of looked at the DSO landscape in the US, right, the traditional DSO is very sort of hands on and wants to kind of make operational changes as their kind of primary source of value creation, right? And there's typically one way of doing things, right? And you sort of have to conform. And I think that's where a lot of the tension comes from, because if you don't like what that way is of doing things, you're never going to be happy. And so I think the fundamental basis of independence dental is where we sort of reject the notion that there's a one size fits all solution to running a dental clinic. And instead, we take the philosophy that, look, there are many people doing different things in the same markets and both being successful, catering to different niches, not unlike how we're trying to cater kind of different niches in the market versus our DSO competitors. And so, who am I to say how you should run your dental clinic? Rather, what we do is find folks who are already successful, who don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel, and basically continue to do what's been working for them in their unique market and in their unique niche. And so I think that's sort of the initial starting point for what we do, is that just recognizing that what you're doing is okay. If you're being successful doing what you're doing, it's not really my place to tell you to change how you're doing that, right? And maybe we have something to learn about what you're doing, right? So I think just fundamentally switching that over has been the foundation of what we're doing at Independence. And then, okay, how do we do that, right? So I think the first thing we commit to that's really unique is having we call a normal course of business clause, and that's always a commitment in writing where we say, listen, we are truly not going to change any process of the clinic aside from some very specific things, around, we've got to pay your people, right? We got to put everyone on our payroll, we got to pay the bills, and we got to do all that back office accounting. But everything else is sort of a la carte, and so we have vetted a number of service providers to help in all the ways that every traditional DSO would help, right? And whether that's help with marketing, help with collections, help with the PPO negotiation, whatever it may be, we can offer all of those, but it's not mandated, right? So you can choose, you stick up your hand and say, Lane, I need help with this, and we'll find you help with that, and provide you with choices about whom to use and how to go about doing that, right? And so we prefer to kind of make suggestions and help guide people, but it's not a take it or leave it, all or nothing kind of approach. And so I always sort of tell my prospective partners, I know I can make you happy because we can dial up or down the amount of support, and on the other side, the amount of autonomy that you take on when you partner with us. And so I think that is what's really resonating with folks, and they're saying, okay, this is what I've been looking for, something that allows me to kind of preserve my legacy, and I can kind of gives me some ease around what that transition is going to look at. Like, I know things are going to remain the same, and so that's how we're carving a little niche for ourselves in the DSO space.
So, to me, DSOs and their finest hour and how a lot of them are even started reminds me of a reverse mortgage. I mean, a lot of dentists who don't like DSOs, they're on Dental Town talking about how great a reverse mortgage was. I'll never forget, when our family had to do it, and we told Grandma that, well, don't leave all these ungrateful children a bunch of money while you're, can barely get by on Social Security while you're sitting on this house. Let's sell the damn house to a reverse mortgage. And by the way, she freaking buried them. She missed being 100 by 4 months. I'm pretty sure the guy who signed off on that at the bank, they probably shot him 20 years ago. And so she got all that money up front that she could spend, but she still owned her house. And a lot of dentists, the old saying, never let your money get too far from cash. A lot of times a dentist is like, they got all this money, all their money's tied up in paper and owning an equity like a dental office. And sometimes they really, really want to spend it, like say, so they can get a divorce or send their kids to college or whatever the hell. And it's just a great financial vehicle to convert some of your equity into cash. And that's what I think, if that's your situation, the DSOs are an excellent solution. But then for you, on the other hand, if I was you, you wouldn't have wanted to done a reverse mortgage on my grandma, because you did it in her 80s and she lived to be 99 in 8 months. But you would want to keep that, unlike a reverse mortgage where you hope grandma dies the day after she signs it. When it's a dental office, you would want Dr. Good to stay there as long as you can. And so that's my question going into, it seems like the largest problem in the dental associate market, doesn't matter if it's DSO. And by the way, I don't even like term DSO. You start out, you're an individual. And then I got my first employed associate dentist because it was professionally isolating and boring and lonely going from 120 alcoholics in dental school to by yourself. So I wanted a buddy, and I wasn't smart enough to get a 60-year-old that knew what the hell was going on. I got someone equally as young and dumb as I was, and it was fun. And then, so it's a group, and there's 168 hours in a week, and the most you can be there is 32 hours a week, and you can't close your dental office because that explains why 8.5% of all the emergency room visits are odontogenic in origins because doctors closed. And so then you have group, and hopefully you don't overlap overlap the same procedures with the same hours. Hopefully, you expand more hours for more availability. And then it makes sense that, well, we're on the south side of town. Why don't we put one on the north and the east and the west so we can have a layer management, do the things we don't want to do, like marketing, advertising. You can't buy a billboard for one office, all that stuff, so that
Yeah.
they can just do dentistry. I mean, it just makes so much sense. And I see it work all the time at that first level. One town, north, south, east, west, one layer management. Where I don't understand it is then when a bigger DSO comes over and buys that one, and that one's all still there, all the overhead, everything's there, but then they are going to take another like 14% off the top, and it's like, what the hell can you do for me to give me 14%? I mean, my lab, my labor, I mean, my lab and supplies isn't even 14%. So I don't understand these group practice multi-location with 2 layers of management. I see it working great at one level, but again, it comes back to the associate level. The associate turnover in dentistry is 1 to 2 years. I mean, I don't care where this associate works. He or she is gone in 1 or 2 years. And so then if I buy that practice from Dr. Good and he takes the money and runs, and then I replace it with some kid who graduated from dental kindergarten school 8 hours ago, that's a lot of risk. I mean, that's like real estate having a vacant tenant. So how are you going to, when you buy a dental office, how are you going to retain the doctor longer? And what is your solution to the revolving door merry-go-round of dentist associates jumping from job to job?
Yeah, sure. So I think, for your analogy about, the reverse mortgage is certainly not wrong. I think that is, a pretty accurate way to kind of look at it for somebody who's selling, right? Like that you could very much clearly characterize it that way. And we actually take great pain to make sure that we're partnering folks who actually want to stick around, right? And so on the way in, we make sure that, somebody is really looking to stick around, for the long term. And then I think the second piece is, I think the reason it's you get a revolving door type situation with associates is because, and not to sound too offensive here, but when you're an associate, it's sort of like the end of it's like a dead end job, right? You can't go any higher, right? There's nothing further to aspire to. And I think that it has a demoralizing effect on folks, right? And yet at the same time, it's become more challenging for, in particular, younger dentists to become owners in these businesses, right? And so, like a lot of the clinics and practices that we look at, it's a big bite for if you're a young person who wants to get into, the ownership portion of it. And so, I think what our strategy has been is to not buy 100% of the clinic. And I think this is sort of we want to be able to, help improve the clinic, right? So it's not just that reverse mortgage, right? So there's actually a benefit that our partner gets to reap by partnering with us. And we've got a number of mechanisms to help our doctors grow their businesses and have them get paid for that. Minority ownership being one of those. But for the associate doctors too, right? We want to see a succession happen that's successful from our partner doctor to, that up and coming young associate. And so having the prospect of them to be owners in the clinic, we found that's a great motivator, and there's a reward for them, for their efforts beyond, just taking home a paycheck. And we think, when they partner with us and become owners, well, we can provide them with, a smaller bite size that is more affordable, and kind of has many of the benefits of ownership without many of the drawbacks, right? Because we're able to kind of take on some of the burden that they would face if they're out on their own. So that's kind of my way of thinking about it. And I think the last thing I'll mention is you got to treat people with respect, and you got to give people treat people with humility. And I think that's one thing that we try and do is just kind of be fair and equitable with people, and provide them with a good place to work. And I think that's something that's often lost on, folks who come from my world, as you said, right? The guys who use the word EBITDA can be very profit driven, right? And I think what's lost on many of them is that there's a human side to the equation. You have to balance that, and if you treat people well, it may not be the most profitable in the short term, but in the long term, it pays off in spades.
Yeah. Respect is everything, and a lot of this stuff it doesn't even make sense. I mean, here's the reoccurring things I see routinely with the term. Because remember, I'm in the DSO center of I think the earth. I don't know where there's more DSOs. I don't know where you have 18% of the dentists working for DSO, but it's so many stupid things like a patient come in and this kid's really feeling sorry for a patient and he's already numbing up. The only thing they can fix is this one tooth they're gonna pull, and but he's like, well, hell, you're gonna be numb and you lost your job and blah blah blah. And that while that quadrant's numb, I'm gonna pull out the other one behind it for free. And the office manager says, no, you can't do that for free. And I'm like, office manager, he's a dentist and he's just doing it for free. I mean, he's doing the one, but he's doing the other one for free. And they just piss them off. It's like they didn't go to school 8 years at college not to help somebody. I mean, it's like when a fireman drives by a house and there's a house on fire, then I say, nope, you can't. You stay in the car because you're clocked out and you're not, you know what I mean? It's like, what do you mean clocked out? There's a damn house on fire. And the other thing with them is it's the temp. I think the dental temporary agency is killing DSOs, and I can't because their MBA mind says, well, if I have a full-time employee benefit, blah blah blah. So this dentist comes out of dental kindergarten school. He's only done 2 root canals in his entire life, and both of them were in a dream. And he's finally going to do his first root canal, and he's been working here for a month, and he's got his trusty assistant, and she's egging him on. You got this, buddy. You got this. And then he shows up, and he's got a temp. And it's like, and I named 5 dentists off my hand where that's the minute they walked out. When they walked in there that big day, and they said, "Well, where's my girl Friday?" We got you a temp, and it's a turnover of the temporaries, the assistants, and what these young kids want is a mentor. They want to go work for a place where they look up to the older bull. And it reminds me of a crazy story with elephants, but I think it applies. It was on 2020, it's about 20, 30 years ago. There was a game reserve in Africa, and poachers had got a hippo. And they couldn't believe it because this game reserve was all wired security camera. They couldn't believe it. And they went to the tapes, and it was 2 baby young elephants went and were playing with it and killed it. And they put on the video, and all the zoologists said, oh yeah, how old are those elephants? And they said, oh, one's 12 and one's 14. They go, yeah. So you don't have a bull elephant in that herd, do you? And they didn't even think about it. And they started looking at it. No, the oldest one was a female and all that. And they go, yeah, and I bet they're sexually active too, right? And they go, well, yeah, they're always having sex with the cows. Says, yeah, put one 40-year-old bull in there, and it'll never happen again. And they did, and it happened. I mean, young 25-year-old kids, they want to go work where there's a bull elephant in there. They pull out a wisdom tooth and can't get the root, or they're not sure about the diagnosis, and they want that mentor deal. And so it's kind of like if you can keep that old guy as a 40-year-old bull elephant to keep all the kids in line and keep everything there, it's just the natural transition. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that analogy?
I totally agree. I think mentorship, receiving mentorship and education is hugely desirable amongst associates. I think at heart, what I've noticed, at least with dentists versus other sort of folks who have different careers, is that they are very passionate about dentistry, and they tend to be lifelong learners who really want to get better at their craft. That's like pretty much across the board. It's very rare that I meet a dentist that doesn't feel that way, especially the young ones. But I think what's even more interesting is that the bull elephants, as you say, the older doctors, almost all exclusively want to pass on what they've learned over the years to doctors, and so facilitating that is actually a win-win. You're pleasing both the senior doctor and the junior doctor by facilitating that process. So I think, that's an easy win for any DSO, is to just facilitate the transfer of knowledge from the old sage to the young up and comers, and you're going to get that's going to be positively received by both sides of the equation. So I completely agree, and I think it's a hugely important part of the culture that you need to kind of instill in any successful dental organization.
So my homies, I know how they think. They have all these rules of thumb, and they're thinking, well, they're thinking the decisions whether to sell or not to you. And then they decide, okay, yeah, I want to do this. I want to convert some of my dental office to equity. I need some money for this. I don't want it just a transition where you work up until you are scheduled for your bypass, sell before the surgery, and it's over. They kind of like a more smoother transition. And he knows that you're going to pay exactly 1 year's collection for his office. They don't understand that there's two offices that collect $1 a year, and one makes a penny profit and one makes 25 cents profit. They're not valued the same. And then he's thinking, well, I'm not going to call him because I know before I call him, I should get it painted and replace the paneling with some shag carpet so you're the buyer and my homie's the seller. Um, what are you looking at, and what should he be thinking about grooming his asset for sale and how much you're going to pay for it? And they'll tell you in real estate. By the way, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, where every year 10% of all the homes that buy and sell are Canadians. I mean,
Yeah.
this is Planet Canada down here, and the Americans don't fly the American flag, but all the Canadians do, so they know where each other's at during the zombie apocalypse. And every real estate agent will tell you if you put a swimming pool in your backyard for $1, you will not get that dollar back out when you sell. I mean, some things work and some things don't. So I want you to two conversations. First, talk to the older guy who's going to sell to you, and then we'll follow that with the younger guy that wants to go work for you. What should this older guy be thinking? How are you going to value his practice? What are you looking for? Some people think size matters. Tell us what you're looking for.
Sure. So from my perspective, right, the most important valuation metric is going to be your favorite word, right? EBITDA.
Oh my God! I can't believe it. You said,
So
but that wasn't just for me. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger both say that. They've been saying that. So I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and I went to Creighton University in Omaha. And in 1980, when I took my first dental business class, Warren Buffett came over and taught to our class, and Charlie Munger was born there. And so I'm kind of that conservative backwater terminology. But anyway, continue.
yeah, so I mean, if EBITDA is sort of what it is, right? And unless you're gonna go and actively do something to improve your profitability, and if you wake up in the morning and say I want to sell, the EBITDA is sort of a non-negotiable number. Where I think people can improve a lot, probably the best bang for your buck, is just really getting some solid financial statements completed, and reconciling all of your sort of production and collection data, and having a very clean practice management software so that it matches with your financials quite easily. Because when if someone like me sees financials that match the collection report, that match the production report, it gives us a great deal of confidence that we can rely on those numbers. And when we see things that don't match up, and there's a lot of explaining for why I put this expense through and that, that's something that causes headaches for someone in my world. So I think that's probably the best bang for your buck. I would say, setting that aside, right, improving the profitability is going to be the next best thing to getting, the value up. And so, there's a number of things that you can do in that respect, but sometimes partnering with the DSO can also be the way to do that, right? So I know what we sort of sell to our partners is that, hey, listen, we'll value your clinic on EBITDA today, but why don't we take a year to improve it and look back and see what sort of EBITDA we can make after we help and improve that, and then give you a second bite at the apple and sort of revalue the clinic on that basis. So there are ways to kind of get it improved, and then I would say really just focus on what do you really need in the clinic, right? And so I found that a lot of our current partners who went through the process of thinking, who first maybe got their EBITDA and said, hey, why am I paying for this service that we don't really use anymore? And why do we have all these magazine subscriptions that don't really get us any value? And just sort of thinking hard about what do you actually need, and seeing what you can do with less is a great exercise that just will go straight to the bottom line. So those are my sort of thoughts around how to maximize as a seller.
So, what practice management software do you prefer working with? And one of my pet peeves I've had forever. I mean, when I got out of school in '87, it was SoftEnd. It was owned by Kodak. It was the biggest one, whatever. But they never ever connected it to Quicken. I got my MBA from ASU, so I wanted something a little more fancier. I got Peachtree Accounting, which is now bought by Sage. But the ones in America, I mean, half of them are Dentrix and the other half are EagleSoft and whatever, but none of them hook up to Quicken or QuickBooks
Yeah.
Pro. So my homies don't know that. I mean, when they tell you that they love Dentrix, I mean, that you already know they have a head injury or they're 8 years old or, well, did you bump your head roller skating or what the hell happened to where you thought Dentrix was good? My dad had a Sonic drive-in, and back in the day, it was just called NCR. So it was just the cash register. The cash register at the end of the day, I mean, when the meat guy delivered 10 boxes, a damn cash register could close out the day and okay, we did $2,100 and our food cost was 19%, crew labor 14%, God, it was better with a cash register back in the day than my poor homie has today. They don't hook up to Dentrix, they don't hook up to that. And what I'm wondering is, what practice management software do you have, and then how do you deal with that? Did you write your own? Did you go get a fintech guy to scrub numbers out of Dentrix and EagleSoft and Open Dental and all these for you, or how do you deal with world-class investment banking financing when dental accounting is third world? I mean, I bet the Egyptians had better accounting than my dentist.
Yeah. You know what? You're absolutely right. I think from my perspective, right, the robustness of these practice management softwares for delivering like financial reporting, particularly what we would call accrual accounting, right, like having a balance sheet, is atrocious, right? It almost doesn't work. But I think you're not going to be really satisfied with my answer here. So we actually have no preference, right? We use a piece of middleware. It's by a company called Sika, Sikka.
Sika software.
We looked at a number of these different providers and found that this one had kind of the best compatibility and was reasonably priced. And what it does is exactly what you sort of alluded to, right? It sort of sits behind the practice management software. If you're operating, EagleSoft and it's on there, you'd never know, right? You would never see it, right? But what it does is it pulls out the information, and then we have clinics that are on different practice management softwares. It can sort of standardize all of that information into a dashboard, so we can see everything, like for like, no matter what practice management software that folks are using, right? Folks have to use the software correctly for that to work, right? Which isn't always the case, and so we have had to make little tweaks here and there to get things to work, but generally we're not changing things in a significant way, and I think most folks find the tips we give them helpful because they get a little better insight into how the business is running, and the practice management system becomes more useful. So that's how we do it, and that actually feeds up. We go right out of Sika into our financial reporting. So and it has a robustness that I can get I get a weekly report every week. I know what's going on in every clinic across our network. So it's a powerful tool, and the dentists love it because change sort of introduces risk, and if you got to do a practice management change along with all these other things that you're doing when you're entering a new partnership, it's just one other thing that is not required and can be a headache for folks. So I see when we tell our prospective partners that you're not going to have to change the practice management system, usually there's a sigh of relief there.
And VJ Sika, he was back on the show. He was number 583. Him and I have been talking about this when we started talking about this issue in accounting, the Dead Sea was just merely sick. It hadn't even died yet. But I keep thinking in some romantic kind of way that virtual reality and artificial intelligence, not virtual reality, but artificial intelligence is someday going to help practice management. I mean, can you imagine, like, you're wearing those AirPods in your ear, which I assume you do because you love that show, Something About Mary. And so that's whispering in your ear. You're in the middle of doing a root canal, and they go, "Your next patient canceled. You ought to just finish this root canal." Or just always give me. And then you're walking in saying, "Well, if we're gonna do this." Might as well do this other one while you're here. And the AI's like, yeah, your operatory costs $100 an hour, and you signed up with a PPO plan that's going to give you $80 for that filling. So if you do that filling, you'll lose $20. And if you want to lose money, why don't you go shopping during lunch, or you could stay during lunch and do this for free and lose $20. I mean, I think the AI is desperately needed. I mean, imagine here's a bottle of water. Imagine I made this bottle of water, and the cap was the profit. And I make this bottle of water, and the cap's 10% profit margin. And so, how do you make $1 million? Well, you sell 10 million of these for $1 each, and you made $1 million of profit. And here's my dentist. So he makes a bottle of water, has no idea what the costs are. I said, well, how much does it cost? You've had the same hygienist to assistant to receptionist. You 5 people have stood in this building for a decade, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and your collection, everything's the same. Could you just divide that by the 3 only operatories in your deal and get me an operatory per hour? And he's like, no, I can't do that. Okay, well, what are you doing? I'm doing an MOD composite. Well, how much you get for it? Whatever price he says is higher than any price he gets. I don't know what these guys do. He'll say, well, I get about $250 for an MOD composite. And I say, okay, well, first of all, you're signed up for 9 PPO plans. None of them pay as high as $250. The highest one is $205, and the bottom one is $100. So if at $205, how are you making money at $100? At $205, your overhead was 50%. Your cost would be $100, and your overhead's not 50%. Yet you're signed up over here at $100. So they don't know the price, the cost of goods and services sold, and they sell it for 9 different prices. And they chose a full-blown schizophrenic accounting system where half of it is in Dentrix and half of it is in QuickBooks Pro. And then they think that they're the dumb one. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know. If you tried that at Chick-fil-A, they'd go out of business by Friday. The only reason it even works is because, it's crazy. So how can you fix anything on that? How can you just get, even accounting? Just basic accounting. You're like, well, certainly the American Dental Association has decided on a accounting chart of accounts so we can all compare the accounting even Steven. Oh shit, no. Oh, don't even go there. You'll be attacked by a unicorn riding a mermaid twice before the ADA would do that. But it's so obscenely weird. Can you fix any of that? And will AI be a big solution in figuring all that shit out?
I think AI is really interesting for a lot of applications. I think in dentistry, however, it's going to be very slow to make a big impact. I think the most interesting AI product I've seen lately was around collections and really managing revenue cycle management, right? Because a lot of times people submit something to the insurance company, it's incomplete, or according to the insurance company, or they don't like the code that you use to enter in, right? And the name of the company is eluding me, and I probably should know it, but they basically developed a solution that helps learn how the insurance companies react to your submissions and tailoring the submissions and giving you advice to tailor that so you get better, repayment from or better collections out of these insurance companies. Was one application I saw that was quite interesting. But with respect to sort of the chaos that occurs in clinics across the country every day, I think it's going to be a long time before AI fixes that, and that the folks who you've got to sort of think about how you're running your business and have the sort of tools to look at it to sort of overcome some of those challenges that you're mentioning, right? And I think that's one area where we've been quite successful, and I'm sure other DSOs too. But joining a DSO, like one of the things we do right away is look at what your codes are relative to others, right? And what your fee schedule is, what your reimbursement rates are, and sometimes there's very simple tweaks you can make to improve those rates. and we've seen many of our partner doctors be successful in that respect. So I think that's one area we can help. Is AI going to be the answer? I think around the edges, but I think at the heart of it, you've got to maybe have take a step back and look at things from a higher vantage point, and partnering with someone like us is usually a good way to do that, because we're gonna help you look at it from a different angle.
So, if someone wanted to talk to you, lecturing to dentists, you always say, okay, it's anybody have any questions? Nobody has any questions. You say, okay, then let's take a 10-minute potty break, and then everybody comes up to you and asks the same damn question. So I don't care what, we could talk for 40 days and 40 nights, and my homie still has to call you and ask a specific question. What's the best way to contact to talk to you or your team? Is it going to independencedso.com, independencedso.com? Or is it should he go to the Firmament Group? Should he go to Vibrant
Yeah.
Equity, where you cut your teeth?
Yeah, so the best way to reach out to us is at independencedso.com. There's a little form there that you can fill out, and one of our senior team members will call you to fill out that form. The other alternative is to email us. You can email us at info@independencedso.com. I actually received that email directly, so don't be surprised to find the one who replies. And that's a great way to start a conversation with us.
And what is your exit plan? I mean, when you're half as old and ugly and bald and fat as I am, what is your plan going to be?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I part of the reason that I didn't continue on with 123 after they brought on a private equity partner was that I wasn't in the driver's seat. I wasn't have the ability to be the CEO, and that was a big motivator for me in starting Independence Dental. And I get this question a lot, like, well, you're gonna flip this thing in 5 years' time, right? Aren't you? And I think that is not exactly a fair characterization of what our plan is. And I think from our perspective, we're really trying to build a company that's going to last for the ages, right? And any good company should not have a defined life period, right? It should be perpetual in nature and continue indefinitely as long as it can, right? And so while our investors, the Firmament Group, who you mentioned, I'm sure will be looking for an exit at some point in time. That's certainly not the end of independence. And in my experience, one investor goes out, a new investor comes in, but the new investors don't come in because they want to make changes and they don't like the way you're doing things. Typically, they're coming into something because they like what they see and they want exposure to that story. So our ownership may change hands, our investors may change hands in the next 3 to 5 years. I think that's highly likely. But the faces around the table here at Independence will likely be the same.
Well, are you a big fan of the show Shark Tank?
Yeah, I am. Yes.
Yeah, and obviously the smartest one on the show, it's always the bald guy, right? It's Mr. Wonderful. And with Mr. Wonderful, if you have an exit strategy, you're dead to him. I mean, it's kind of also with investing, like, people just they just believe whatever they want to believe. And now a big thing is diversification. I mean, ever since the Vanguard funds came out, they told everybody, well, just diversify to all 500. Well, basically that means that so zero about anything. You're just going for a lower cost structure, and you're admitting, look, I don't know nothing. But if you look at every billionaire who's actually alive, Warren Buffett owns all of his money in Berkshire Hathaway, Bill Gates owns it all in Microsoft. I mean, all the billionaires are not diversified in 500 stocks. They have all their money in one. And like Sam Walton, he was actually the richest man in the world. It was never Bill Gates. But Sam Walton, because his was divided up between Sam, Helen, his daughter, and 3 sons. So, and whenever they'd say, Bill Gates, the richest man in the world, okay, we'll add numbers 16 to 17 to 18 to 19 to 20 to 21. And it was kind of like the Koch brothers. People forget. There's 4 of them boys, right? And, but Sam Walton was found dead at his desk. I mean, France's President Mitterrand was found dead at their desk. Walt Disney, my hero, and I know he did things wrong. I know that, whenever you talk about Henry Ford or Walt Disney, they say, oh, well, let me tell you something bad he thought or did. Oh, like all my heroes aren't flawed. I'm still waiting to meet the flawless person that lives. Everyone has flaws. In fact, you're not going to believe this, but even I am not perfect. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure there's a flaw somewhere. I have not found it yet. But Walt Disney lived above, he lived in Disneyland. He lived above that. Mr. Honda lived at the plant. Read his autobiography. There's a story where whenever the line stopped, an alarm went off and he ran to the line, and it was in the middle of the night, and he's obviously doesn't sleep in underwear. And before you know it, there's Mr. Honda butt naked, re-engineering the line in the middle of the night. And my favorite banker is Jamie Dimon, the Greek Jamie Dimon. And my God, I've had dinner with him 3 times. And whenever he comes to Phoenix, each branch gets 1 lunch ticket. And when he worked at Citigroup, he lived in his office. He didn't even have a car. So, dentistry is awesome. And it's just, I mean, what would you rather do than have someone come in with a huge toothache? They're holding, I love it when they're holding like a thirst buster to it, and they haven't slept and they're scared. It's like, damn, that's me. I'm up. I mean, it's a fireman. There's your house on fire. And if you just hate dentistry and all you want to do is make money off and get out of there, well, I got an idea for you. Why don't you fix that first? Don't go try to do some liquidity thing. Some dentists, it's easy. I'll never forget talking to this dentist across the street from me, and he said, I'd rather be beaten with a stick than do a root canal. I said, but did you hear they invented endodontist? Yeah, there's 4,000 of them, and those guys like it. Pediatric dentistry, I swear to God, I'd rather work the night shift at Taco Bell for minimum wage than pediatric dentistry. And I loved my 4 kids and my 7 grandkids, but I don't want to be their dentist. I hate it. I wouldn't want to be a veterinarian. All these things. And I have 4 dogs. And I would never be a damn vet. I don't even know when my own dogs are going to do something crazy, let alone your dog. And by the way, if you follow this man on Twitter, I still cannot figure out his dog thing on Twitter. You're on Twitter, you're standing there with a dog hanging out of your shirt. Can you explain the Twitter dog to those wondering?
Yeah, the Twitter dog is a dog from an ex-girlfriend of mine from many, many years ago. You might also notice I'm a lot younger with a few less gray hairs in that picture.
But that is an adorable dog.
But it's a cute dog. I'll give you that.
It's an adorable dog. I love that dog. But the bottom line is this, man. If you hate dentistry, I mean, imagine if you were a tortoise and halfway, you're at 20 years old, you say, I hate being a tortoise and I want to get this shell off my back. And everybody's like, dude, you're going to live 100 years. You're like one of those few species that live 100 years like humans. I mean, if you hate dentistry, fix that. And some of it's staff. I mean, I know dentists. I say, what do you hate the most about dentistry? And they go, my hygienist. Fire! Hell, call me, I'll fire. Patients. I not only did I call 911 on 3 different patients. I mean, I thought I heard a commotion and some guys up there yelling profanity at my receptionist because of the bill or insurance. I didn't say a word. I just picked up the phone, call 911. And then when they came here and they said, well, he's gone. Are you good? I'm like, no. I got his chart. Here's his address. He's disturbing the peace, blah, blah, blah. And I tell my staff, I said, I can't have somebody come in here and rattle you at 8 o'clock, and then you got to be nice till 5. Patients don't come first. My staff comes first. That's why Dawn, who's working today at today's dental, she's been there 20 years. Lori, 20 years. Stacy, 20 years. I got so many 20-year veterans, and it's because I don't put patients before my staff. I don't put vendors. I was a big client for Patterson. And then they told me, well, we're not going to be able to sell you supplies on this day. It's too far away. We can only do it at this day, at this time. And I told my assistant, and she started to cry. And I said, well, don't cry. Just fire his ass and we'll find someone else. Put your team first. I treat my team in the way I want them to treat the staff and the patients. And if you can figure out respect, working together as a team, and when I get to work and I'm actually driving into work, I can't wait to see Christina or Jan or Dawn I just can't wait to see them, and I love it, and I love pulling teeth, getting people out of pain. I love root canals getting out of pain. I really don't like, some 50-year-old divorcee lady with 70 pages of notes about how she wants her veneers done because she wants someone to swipe left on Tinder when she hits the redo market. I just figure out what you like, what people you like, and what you don't like. And if you don't like all the business of dentistry, well, and you don't like having all your equity illiquid, and you'd like to get some equity turned to cash, and you'd like to offload some of this, like Sika software. I mean, I got an MBA. I mean, I just like ooh and goo when I'm looking at Sika software, but I know my homies, that ain't the noise they're making when they see accounting software. They're usually puking, vomiting, and crapping in a trash can. But just fix what's broken, fix why you don't like it, get that fixed up, get happy, work with people you want to work with, do the type of dentistry you want to do. It's all solvable. And Lane, thanks so much. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. You got so much expertise. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with my homies everything you've picked up on this whole DSO movement.
No, my pleasure. This was a lot of fun, Howard. Thank you for having me.
All right, man. You got to wash your hair. There's something hanging on your hair. So go get that washed off and say hi to that dog for me.
I will. You have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.